Welcome to Books and Things with me. And a very special night tonight. We've first time we've tried something like this. We're going to have an actual class, a college class from UConn down at Avery Point, and it's called Death, Dying, and Bereavement. And Nena Blake is going to, it's her class that she teaches every year. And I usually go over there and talk about basically what we're going to do tonight. So it's going to be a two-part series. So at the end of the program, please stay tuned to its part 2. And we're going to discuss death, dying, and bereavement, and my situation in my book. And I'm going to introduce you to Nena. Nena?
So I'm going to introduce you to Tom. So Tom was introduced to me by a former student, and she said, you need to have Tom come and speak to your class. And you know, a lot of students have people they want to speak to my class. We met, we talked, and I said, this is a person I need to come and speak to my class. I won't tell you a story, but it is a compelling story. And it's a story that, you know, none of us want to experience. And it's been 8 years. And we've met here and we've interviewed 3 times, because as time goes on, things change. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not so good. Our last meeting, my father had just died.
That's right.
So things change over time. But grief is one of those things. It waxes and it wanes. And, you know, his story, you'll understand more why we keep meeting. So with that, no further ado, Tom is going to take the podium and listen to his story, and I'm sure you'll have questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We were connected by Stacy, who is a girlfriend of my son. And my son was killed in a car accident 21 years ago. And he was 21 years old. And I wrote a book called My Son Todd and My Guardian Angels. And the book basically tells how I learned how to cope with the death of my only child. I say, learn how to cope, but I'm still learning. It's been 21 years, so you still learn. And I come to talk to the classes because I've been there and I know what it's like to be in a horrible situation. And I know that your people are trying to learn something about the death, dying, and bereavement thing. And I can tell you that when you get that call, actually I didn't get a call, I just saw an ambulance and police cars going by my house, and I knew it was a car accident. I knew it was my son Todd. And I went down there, and sure enough, he had been killed in a car accident. They didn't tell me then, but I had to go to the hospital, and they said, no, he didn't make it. That is the worst thing you want to hear. It's just, it's undescribable. It's just, you can take whatever the worst thing has happened in your life, multiply that times about 1,000, and you probably come close. And the death is sudden, and then you have to go through the grieving process. And the grieving process is very difficult because you don't really know what it is until somebody says, well, it's going to be these steps. Then you like to get through those steps and try to get past the grieving process. But the grieving process will take 8 to 10 years. Some people, maybe a year or 2. Me, it took 8 years to let go of the grief, which I never understood. I still don't. I do know when I let it go. And I couldn't explain it to you. I just know that it was like something lifted off my back that I thought, wow, I think I just let go of the grief. And basically what you're doing is you're not grieving anymore. You are still worried and thinking about him and partially grieving for him because that's your son. You're not going to stop that. It's just that you don't grieve the way you had been for my first 8 years. And you get depression. Depression, you can't figure out which step you're taking first. Is it going to be a left foot, your right foot, or maybe both at the same time? Because you just can't concentrate. And it took me a long time. 3 years after he died, I started writing a book. And I wanted to write about my son, because I was having a grandson coming, and I wanted to write a book about my son so I could give it to my grandson so he can know what his father was like. His girlfriend was 3 months pregnant when he died, so I have a grandson, and so I wanted to write a book about it. The only thing I could write about was his accident, how he died, and going to the funeral and his friends and things, and that first part was all about that. And I put the book away, and I didn't touch it again for another 3 years. And I wrote some more, and I thought, well, I'm feeling better, so. You never know when you get out of depression. It's not like you can turn it on, turn it off, and say, okay, I'm out. So you just think that you're feeling better. So I tried writing some more, and I wrote the second part of the book. 9 years after he died, I wrote the last part of the book. In the 10th year, I wrote the last chapter. So it took me 10 years to get through this. And I was told by a therapist that I was lucky in those stages that I could put 2 sentences together. And then I went to a medium who said that my son helped me write the book. And I think that's probably true, because that's a whole other story. But the spirits do come back and talk to you. Do you have any questions so far? Has anybody lost anybody that is close? Who'd you lose?
Just like grandparents.
Grandparents?
Mother.
Father?
Father.
Father.
Mm-hmm.
I lost mother, father, and a cousin.
Yeah.
For myself, mother, father, loved ones, like high school sweethearts and friends.
Yeah.
Through various
All right.
stages of my life.
It's difficult. And people say, well, I lost my mother, but it's not like losing a son. And yet, a loss is as big as you. If that was your biggest loss, if it was your dog, that's your biggest loss, that's a terrible loss. People don't understand that the loss that you feel can be just as big as mine. It's because whatever you get. And I remember when dogs died. God, that was like tragedy. Nothing compared to what losing a son, but it's still a tragic loss. A divorce can be a loss. You get divorced, you say, oh my God, what am I going to do now? And blah, blah, blah. And so it's still a loss. And these losses are trauma to the body. And that is what happens to a lot of people that within 4 or 5 years, I understand the statistics say that one of the parents will die because of the trauma to the body. I know a friend of mine died of cancer. I had a heart attack at the end of my 5th year of my son. And I've had several people that have, all of a sudden, they die because the trauma, and you just can't get over that trauma. You can't get through it. And it's very difficult to understand it. And it's just very difficult because you have no reason to live. You lose a son or a daughter, your child, your foundation is gone.
Most marriages end.
Your marriages end. Mm-hmm. Divorce. I got divorced. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine is buried near my son. His father died, and another one that got divorced. And that happens because the trauma. And the husband may look at the wife and say, get over it. The wife may look to him and say, you get over it. And next thing you know, they're just not talking to each other. And it's very difficult. So you have to, it's just no way out of it. It's just, you have to just put up with it. You know, it's just, that's facts of life. Mm-hmm. And parents, you expect parents to pass. Not that it's easy. My mom died first, then my son, then my father, and then 3 years ago, my brother died. So they're all gone, just me, except my grandson. And each one of those losses are different. You know, you lose your mom and dad. I've been out of the house for over 30 years. So it wasn't like I was seeing my mom and dad every day. I saw my son every single day, and that's a big difference in the amount of the loss that you're going to suffer. I wrote the book. The book is heals. It helps people heal, and it tells what I went through. I put memoriams in the paper every year on his birthday, and there's 10 of them in this first book. And if you read the 10 memoriams, you see the amount of depression decreasing over the 10 years, just because of the way I wrote them. And which I thought is interesting. My family also changed over the 10 years. I had so many people before. I'm down to like 3 or 4 now. And it just, the family changes. Some are not there anymore. And so it's kind of like a diary of what I went through. And even though I didn't do it on a daily basis, I did do it on an annual basis. And it's hard for me to read. But I understand people read 5 to 6 times. And I think that's cool because they're getting messages out of it.
What role did his friends play then and now? As far as,
I'm sorry?
What role did his friends, how
My
were they?
friends,
His friends, yeah.
His friends are the guardian angels.
Okay.
The book is My Centauri, My Guardian Angels. Guardian angels are people or spirits that come in and out of your life when you need them. His friends, I'm going to say probably about 12 of them, close friends, came to my house every day and made sure that I was still okay. Right after he died, they came over to the house and they go up to his room and they'd sit in his room. And it made me feel good that I'm not alone. I got all these kids here with me, and my ex-wife. She wasn't an ex then, but the kids have kept to get in touch with me over the last 20 years. I know if I need somebody, I can pick up a phone and I can get one of them to help me with something. 2 of the girls like stepdaughters to me. A couple of the guys like sons. One of his girlfriends married his best friend. Thought to me it was like a son and daughter getting married. And I did the wedding. I was a DJ, so I did the music and everything. And as a matter of fact, I just got out of the hospital after the heart attack. So the kids are there, and they support me, and I've supported them, and it's nice to watch them grow. And even though I don't have my son to watch him grow, I can watch his buddies and see how they're turning out. And it is what it is. It's hard.
How did they handle it when it happened and soon thereafter?
They took it well. And every night we'd sit there because he went to Farmington to get have the body checked, autopsy, and then so it was like 3 or 4 days before he came back, and the kids would come over and what should I do and this and that, and I'd tell them, say, look, it's going to be really hot. You don't have to wear a shirt and tie. You get comfortable. This is not an old person's funeral. It's a young child, and I want to keep it that way. I don't want anything sad. I want to keep it up on a high note. And I think about 15 of them went up to David's Cafe and wrote the eulogy for my son. A copy of it's here. I'm not going to read it, but it's a copy of it in here. And each one of them sat at the bar and wrote part of the eulogy, which I thought, this is fantastic. And these aren't college kids. These are high school kids. And, come on. But anyway, they sat and wrote this eulogy for their friend. On the day of the funeral, we're down at the Holiday Inn, Best Western Mystic. At the time, it was Best Western. They called me up and said, can we take care of the people after the funeral? And I said, please, because I don't know what I'm going to do. So they had hot and cold food, and oh my God, big spread, and everybody donated, because he worked there for them. And so yeah, everybody donated their time and the food and everything. So we're sitting there, and somebody said, "Where are the kids?" I said, "I don't know." And somebody else says, "They stayed to take care of Todd." We'll come to find out, the funeral director told me later, he said, "Tom, they wouldn't leave. We gave them all shovels, and they buried them." And then they arranged the flowers and everything. But these are real friends. And this is the way 20, 21-year-old kids are with their friends. I thought that was, excuse me, tickle. And it was really great. But they took care of their buddy. They still do. Anything else? Any more questions?
Tom, do you have any advice for anybody that goes through a tragedy like this, as far as a support group or any kind of counseling to turn around and help people get through a situation like yourself?
I went through therapy, 13 months of therapy. There's a lot of different kinds of depression and traumatic experiences. I knew that my experience was due to the death of my son. Not a mental thing. I didn't need medications, and I refused them. The doctor asked me if I wanted something to take the edge off. I took one pill the first night, and then I didn't take any. And I felt inside that I wanted to go through the whole experience of everything. I didn't want to bottle it all up, and then 10 years from now, get off the pills and have everything come sweeping back. There are programs out there today. 21 years ago, there weren't. Today, you got hospice. They have programs for people who lost children. There's a group called the Compassionate Friends. And I think there's a couple other groups that people can go to. And depends on what you want to do, what you're looking for. I've looked for mediums. I went to mediums. I went to psychics. I went to a couple different people, which is one of the reasons the church doesn't want my book in there, because it talks about going to mediums. They don't want you to do that. And I had one medium that her name was Sandy, and her mother owned a restaurant, and I went into the restaurant with my date, and she said, "Todd wants to talk to you." I'm a little skeptic, you know. I was like, "Sure, okay." "No, he does. Next week, though, because I'm too busy tonight." I said, "Okay, fine." So I went in the following week, and we sat there, and she said, "Oh," she said, "I'm so happy here. He is so excited about talking to you." And no. I go, "Really?" So we sat, and she said some things that he wanted to get through to me. One of them was the book. He said he was glad I left the bad parts out, which absolutely nobody knew what I left out. And the other thing was that he helped me write the book. And I think so, because a lot of the stuff that's in the book, I don't remember writing. I don't even know where I came up with it. And then she also told me how the accident happened. He said he wasn't sure. He said, but something jumped out in front of him. He swerved, went across the road, and flipped the car. And she also talked about my father. And in the meantime, she's holding this ring in her hand for about a half an hour. At the end of that, she gave me back the ring, and it was ice cold. I mean, ice cold. I almost couldn't touch it. I said, "What's up with that?" So then she had to do something. She came back. She took my watch. Same thing, half an hour later. Ice cold. So I thought she was fantastic. She was young, and I thought she got out of the business, but I just found out that her daughter just passed away. And I've reconnected with her. Matter of fact, I had her on a TV show last week, and she's doing great. Not because of the daughter, but because of what she's been. She's in a holistic, spiritual healing, and of course her daughter is that's very tragic. And I can sympathize with her. I try to help her, and It's difficult. I don't care how old the child is. I had a friend of mine, when my son died, he died, and he was 60. And I called his mother, and the two of us sat on the phone and cried. Now, she was 81, 82 years old. So it doesn't make any difference how old you are or how old they are. It's the same thing. You know? Did I answer that question?
Yeah. Yes, you did.
Okay. Anybody else? You gotta help me out here. We still got some time.
I had a similar experience back in 1970 with a cousin of mine dying tragically. He had just visited his girlfriend, and he was coming back home at night. That'd be my aunt and uncle. That was be my cousin.
Yeah.
And he was driving a small Volkswagen, and he hit a bridge abutment. He died instantly.
Yeah.
And he was so badly mangled in that accident that when we went to the funeral, they had an open casket, but they had worked on him so much that really what we were seeing, we didn't see him.
Yeah, yeah.
And just facing him and the family was quite a traumatic experience.
Sure it is.
And I think to this day, when I see the family, the mom and dad the mom is still alive. I know that she is, in your exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
You never forget.
No, you don't.
And that was my experience with somebody young going through a similar accident.
Yeah.
And,
You never get over it. It's there forever. And I wouldn't want to get over it because I wouldn't want to lose the memory of him and being able to see his face. I don't hear his voice too much anymore. But I see his face, and he comes and visits me. And I've had several visits.
Explain that.
You have to, well, the first visit he came, and I was in a bowling alley bowling. I used to bowl. And there was somebody laying in the middle of one of the alleys. And I said, hey, get out of the way. So I turned to bowl. And the guy started laughing. I said, what are you laughing at? And I walked down, there was my son. He said, I'm just funning with you, Dad. I said, well, get out of the way. So the two of us went over and we were talking. And my wife at the time said, who are you talking to? And I said, I'm talking to Todd. She said, I don't see him. And I looked at him. I said, well, let her see you. So then she saw him and she gave him a hug. And I said, what happened? He said, I screwed up, Pa. I'm just screwed up. And that was it. He disappeared. And then, I don't know, maybe a year or two later, came and visited again. And as his visits came, they got longer. I broke my ankle a couple years ago. And I came home walking. And he was sitting on the porch. And I said, what are you doing here? He said, just come down and see how you're doing. How's your ankle? And I said, good. He said, okay, just checking. Give me a hug, and off he went. They don't walk away. They just disappear. and then they used down a couple other times. And then one of the last ones was he would come and stay for a week. Not an actual week, but his week, which is no time period. And it was probably a 10-minute dream. But he was there for a week. And he'd get up in the morning, he'd go to work, we'd have breakfast, and he'd come home. I don't know where he was going. But he'd come home at night, we'd sit and we'd talk and have a good evening. And I'd wake up in the morning blessed, knowing that I got a hug. I knew it was real. And so it made me feel good. And I think that's one of the things that people have to live with is signs. Every time I find a feather, I know it's hidden, dropping one off. And there's certain signs that you'll watch for. And I'll get to those in the second half because I can't describe it to you. It's just, there are signs out there that they leave for us all the time. And all we have to do is open our eyes and our ears and pay attention. And they're there. And it's, your cousin, that's tragic. It's just not, I got a class reunion in a couple of months. We lost 33 people. And I think it doesn't seem right. But
just another example of a tragedy within our family. We used to have this couple that lived with my mother and father and us as kids, and they had a daughter who had a daughter. So this daughter was away in college back in 1988, and she was coming home from Europe to Utica, New York, when she was on Pan Am Flight 103, the one that exploded over Scotland.
oh yeah,
They killed everybody on board that day.
yeah.
And the mother today has on Facebook, or not Facebook, but in an email to the family members, and it says, remember the name. I can't remember the name. Remember this person, and there's always a prayer in remembrance. And that was how many years ago?
You can't let people forget. And I do this all the time. I put the memorial notices in. I put things on Facebook, and I even started a program called Loved Ones Lost. And I'll have to talk about that. We've got a couple of minutes left. I'll talk about that in the next half. We're once again, we're doing a two-part, so please stay tuned and or do what you got to do. Come right back, and we're going to have a second part coming up in a couple of minutes. Next week, if you're shutting off, next week is Frankie Justin Lamprey and his band Rough Stock. Going to be here in the studio. He's got a brand new CD coming out. Just got out, and I got it home. Tish Rabe, who writes children's books, Cat in the Hat, and she's the author for all Cat in the Hat books. And also Tish Rabe and her husband are performing at the Steak Loft this Sunday in Mystic. John Wagoneer, a vet from Norwich, is constructing a memorial to two military men and crashed their plane in the woods of Preston, I think, or in Norwich, and they died in the 1940s. It's a great story. They're going to be on trying to help them get donations. Special thank you to the SEC TV and for making this possible today. And I want to thank everybody from UConn to come down here and Nena for bringing them down. I think it's been a great show. Mm-hmm. Stay tuned. We're coming right back. Welcome back to part 2 of Books and Things. And we're discussing death, dying, and bereavement with the class from UConn at Avery Point. And Nena Lake, who is spearheading this class, and she has done for the past years. And I usually attend the class, and this time we brought the class to here. We were talking about, I wanted to talk about smiling. And as you well know, when I used to go to the first few classes, I'd cry. Yes. And I've gotten over that. I can talk very dearly about my son, and it doesn't bother me. Sometimes I just have to laugh. Laughter is part of healing. I do laugh a lot. I yell at him a lot. I say, "It's your fault." Somebody said, "Boy, you're really getting gray hair." I said, "My son gave it to me. I had dark hair before that." And so I blame him for everything that goes wrong. That's easy to do. It also takes it off me. But if you can't laugh, you cry. And you don't want to cry all the time. It really wears you down. It deflates you.
Yes, it takes years off your life.
It does. It takes a lot of years off your life. So when you walk around, there was a thing on the internet yesterday with a little kid who was asking people to smile. He just lost his mother. His father had died like 2 years before that. He's got nobody. And he's going around making people smile. And I go, what a great thing. And that's what you got to do. Smiling, telling jokes. At first, I couldn't do either one because a funny joke would make you cry. A sad joke would make you cry. Anything would make you cry, no matter what.
It's interesting because this past December, my husband's uncle died, and his son, and
That's right, you got one.
and his son was talking about his life.
Yeah.
And to keep from crying, he would drink water. He says, if you're drinking, you can't cry. So he would keep his bottle of water
point.
there, and anytime he started to cry, he would take a sip, because you can't drink, I guess, and cry at the same time. I don't know if it's true, but
There are certain things that I have that remind me of my son that I don't touch because it just takes me back. And one of the things is a candle. It's a 25-year candle. We burned it down to 21 years. And, of course, he died when he was 21. Didn't make it to Christmas. So I've got this candle that is waiting for somebody to burn off the 21st year. My grandson will turn 21 in January. So I got another year to go. But somebody will finally burn this candle out. And the first couple of years, I'd reach in the Christmas box and pull that thing out and I'd throw it down and go, oh my God, again. You know, you burst into tears because you don't expect it, even though I know what's in the box. Blindsided is something else. That's when you're listening to a radio and his favorite song comes on, or a song comes on that reminds you of him or her, or a picture. And so that's called blindsided. And it knocks you down. And all of a sudden, your tears rolling down, and you weren't even thinking about anything. You know, leave me alone. And so that happens a lot. Or you see somebody that looks like him. So, oh my God, go after the guy. And of course, it's nobody. But there's so many different things that'll get you crying. And people will come up and say things. And I have found out that I am an energy absorber. If you are sad and I give you a hug, you walk away happy and I got your energy. And I'm going, oh, no, not again. But I do absorb the energy. So like at the wake, when all these people kept coming in, I should have been starting to feel better, but I wasn't. I was feeling worse. And they're walking away with smiles. And I'm going, what are you doing to me? But then I realized that this is one of the things that I was doing, was absorbing their energy. And I have to learn how to not do that. People who depress me, I have to learn how to shut them out so that I don't end up with their problems. And I'm just learning how to do that. The other thing I was going to talk about before was signs. We were talking about signs. My son had a feather on his shoulder and one on his leg. And the day of the funeral, I went back to check to see if make sure he was still buried, I guess. I went back to check the grave. And sitting on the grave was a big black feather. And I went, he's there. I took the feather. Since then, I probably got about 100 feathers. I don't pick up feathers if I'm in a chicken coop. I pick up feathers that are laying on the street near my car. But it's just, it got to be one feather someplace that only I'm looking at. And I know it's him. Sometimes I find one in the living room. So, what? A couple months ago, I had a lady down. She's doing a book on people who have suffered tragedies and have done something with themselves. And so we're sitting in my living room, and she was asking me questions about my son. I have 2-room apartment. I have a bathroom door and a living room door. They were both closed. And so she asked me a question. And I was sitting there trying to think of this answer. And we both heard the bathroom door open and close, or the bedroom door open and close. And she said, "Is that Todd?" I said, "Must have been, because nobody else is here." And she's got it on tape. And she sent me the tape. And you can hear that door just as plain as day, just open and close. And I believe in it. He was there. There's no question in my mind. Other times, he'll comes on a TV show now. I've learned about orbs. An orb is an opaque circle that you can see through, but it's almost white. It's almost clear. And up on the screen, there'll be an orb. And that's him visiting me. Because I've asked him, it's time for you to start visiting me at my shows. And the next day, he was here. And I've had a couple of mediums on. And there's been a couple of them, so one for me and one for them. And some people get dimes and nickels or quarters or whatever. That reminds you of the parent. This woman that her daughter just passed away, it's music. And every time she turns the radio on, it's a certain song. It's a Photograph song or something else. That's just to let you know that they're there. When my son died, he took my dog. Well, actually, it was his dog. A week after he died, the dog died. And I said, how did he even take the dog? The refrigerator died. My telephones died. Everything died. And I said, thank you very much. I mean, you left me with nothing here. And I blamed him. But they do that. They can come back and they can wreck your house. And electricity and turn lights on and off and drive you crazy. And I was like a new refrigerator. It's like 3 or 4 years old. There's no reason for this refrigerator to die. It had full of food that people had sent over. Oh. So I said, well, he's probably hungry. Took the refrigerator and the poor dog. But it was his dog. And I think he just called him home with him. The dog had cancer, we found out afterwards. So there are signs, there are visits. I've now become involved with spiritual healing to a point where, not that I can do it, I'm just starting to learn about it because I had some people on the shows, and I'm reading the books, and I'm starting to notice things, and it's hard to explain, but just like the other day, Friday, I was going to Lebanon after the county fair up there. I stopped at a stoplight and a grasshopper jumped on my windshield, a little tiny one. And I went, oh, hello there, Mr. Grasshopper. Thank you for stopping. And he walked across the windshield. Stayed there about almost 2 miles because I was doing like 50 going down Route 85. And this thing is crawling across the windshield. And finally he slipped and flew off. And I thought, how often does that happen? And a grasshopper is supposed to bring luck. And I sold 3 books that day. So I guess it brought some luck. So there's a lot of little things that you can look for, and you get studying this stuff. It's very interesting. Heaven is not up there, it's here. It's right next to us. That's why spirits can come to get you as quickly as they can. It's just another dimension. And this book I was reading talked about the 5th dimension. I said, I thought that was a music group.
You're dating yourself.
I know it. 5th dimension, jeez. I never knew about that. I didn't even know about the 3rd or 4th. So there's a lot of stuff that's out there that brings you closer to the spirit of the lost person. I find him around a lot. He's here, and he's comes to me in dreams. Not too much lately. Questions? Yes.
Tom, you mentioned that you had a grandson, and I was just kind of curious, did you find that the grandson was helpful in being able to recover from your grief? Or at times, was there situations maybe that your grandson reminded you of your own son during certain phases of his life that possibly triggered some depression or anxiety?
Thank you for asking that, because you're right. It was a bittersweet thing. At first, when he was a baby, it was hard to hold him because I held my son so many times, and here I got a grandson, and I've just lost my son. And I try not to let him be a replacement. Mm-hmm. I don't want him to be a replacement. Mm-hmm. Although a lot of times I call him Todd, And he says, why do you keep calling me that? Because I'm used to the other name. Sometimes he reminds me of my son. Other times he reminds me of me. I think he's his own person, as he should be. And people say, well, does he look like your son? And I say, he looks like himself. I don't see it. Other people have said they see it. And I don't look for it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to look at him and say, you look just like your father. I will say, you are just like your father. Pain in the butt. But that's as far as I go. I don't want to be in that position. I don't want to make him feel like he's got to live up to his father. Anybody else?
So, for all of the methods you use to help with your grieving, which did you find the most effective?
Writing a book. I didn't think so at the time, but it's healing because you're getting things out of there. When I first started writing and getting this information on there, I was dumping my heart out. And that whole first section is just dumping all the hurt out. Not that it didn't remain behind, but the thought of getting it out and on a piece of paper, stuff that I couldn't tell people. I couldn't tell you this is how I feel, but it's in here. And the way I feel is in there. I wrote the book exactly how I felt. And that's why sometimes I can't read it, because it brings it all back. But yeah, that was probably the best thing. Finding another love in my life helped. And people coming in and out of your life for a reason. So she's gone, and we're still friends though. But that helped because I was very, very depressed and she had been in my life before as friends in the 70s, and then we got back together in the 90s. And but we helped each other. It's just she understood that if I was in my little office room and she heard me sobbing, she knew why. Another Todd moment, yeah. And so but we took care of each other, and I think that was a really big help. I think probably my demeanor of the way I talk, the way I like to joke and I like to talk to people has helped. And I tell people, when I'm doing a seminar, I'm the luckiest person in this room. We've all lost people. I get to talk about mine. And that is a big plus. I can talk about it. And that was something I really tried to do, is to keep talking about it without crying. And people say, how's Todd? So I didn't want to do that. And so you just keep doing things that make you feel better. The other big important thing is make new memories. Make a new memory. And this is something you can use with anything. Your boyfriend breaks up, your girlfriend, whatever. Make a new memory real quick. And you don't forget the other memory. Just put it aside. And eventually when you need it, it comes back out again. And that's the only thing I can suggest is you make new memories. And just keep understanding that something might happen to that memory. But the others don't go away. They're there. And at first they just hurt. Anybody else?
So I hear there's talk of another book.
Yeah. Yes, I am working on another book. And I keep telling people I'm going to have to write it. I've got maybe 3 or 4 chapters. I'm thinking my son Todd, 21 years later. And it's how I'm still here. I don't know how I've managed to grow. I really thought my life was over. I prayed for it to be over. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, you're involved in the Lions Club, then you're involved in this and that. Today I have an author group that I'm president of. I'm president of the London Lions Club, and VFW, I'm in that, and Mystic Historical Society. I'm in a whole bunch of stuff. Keeps me busy and out of trouble. Otherwise I'd probably still be at home thinking a lot of my son. Not that I don't. Anyway, I think of him every day. It doesn't go away. Mm-hmm. Thank God. Anybody else?
Earlier you had talked about trigger points, like some songs or something kind of going on. Do you find that as time passes that those triggers diminish? And so they don't?
No, they don't.
Okay.
Some get a little less, but for the most part, no. I may not cry as much. I'll give you an example. 3 weeks ago, I was working on the computer like 6 o'clock in the morning. It was on a Friday morning. And on Facebook, a picture, something came up. I don't remember what it was now. But it reminded me of my son. And it just brought a couple of tears to my eyes. And a couple of minutes later, another thing popped up. Reminded me of my son again. I just shed a few more tears. And then a picture of him came up. I looked and I said, no, that one really brought me to tears. So later on, I was talking to my friend and I said, I can't believe this. I said, at 6 o'clock this morning, I get these 3 pictures, or 3 things that remind me of Todd. She said, is Cody all right? That's my grandson. I said, as far as I know. Well, 2 days later, I found out from my grandson he totaled his truck at 6 o'clock in the morning on that Friday. And I said, he said, I'm so amazed that I didn't get hurt because I rolled the car a couple of times. I said, that's because your father was with you. And that was my son telling me that he took care of Cody. Had to be. Yeah. This is the coincidences here. This is happens. At the same exact time. So, do things still bother me? Yeah. and I sometimes just don't understand why they're coming at a certain point. But that was clearly a visit from him. Anybody else? Still got a few more minutes.
At the time of your son's passing, he lived at home with you?
Yes.
Did you, 21 years later, do you still in the same home?
Oh, no. No, I lost the house, I lost the wife, I lost my job. I've heard people go through this and they lose everything. Mm-hmm. And I said, not me. And the house was the first thing to go. No, the job went just before my son. And then the house went, and then we moved into an apartment. Then my wife and I split up. Then my father died, and I still didn't have a job. But I was a DJ, so I used to go out and do some parties and make enough money to live on. And then I started this record store just before he died, and I managed to live on it. But I lost everything. Just nothing left. I didn't care. I really didn't care. You can't think about things like that. Material things have nothing to do with anything. And believe me when I tell you that I was down, and not any feelings about getting back up. And again, my guardian angels, my Alliance members used to come down to the store and make sure I wasn't hanging from the rafter or something. And they stayed behind me for a couple of years until I got to the point where I started to live again. And that was my girlfriend's that started that, because it was kind of nice going over her house, and she understood, and so she helped me a lot. But without it, I don't know if I would have survived.
There are cases of parents who die after their child dies. I had a case where that happened. It can happen.
Oh, yeah. And my case isn't any worse than anybody else's. I have a friend of mine that lost her daughter, 30 years old, and 22 months later lost her son that was 28 years old. And she has a grandchild to take care of. And, but she and her husband are strong, I think. And that's important. And then I have my friend in England that started writing to me last May, a year ago this past May, that she got my book online, And she said, I read your book 3 or 4 times. She said, and it's just amazing. She said, my husband and I were cooking dinner, and we ate, did the dishes, sat on the couch, and he died. That was a month before she wrote to me in April. I mean, just died in her arms. And she said, last time I saw my husband was in a body bag going downstairs. And she's gotten a lot better. I still correspond with her. And all the way in England. And so there are people out there that need help. Some don't want any help. That's fine too. But I'm here to help people as much as I can. And I just wish I could help more.
You talk of your life with your son. Your ex-wife, is she?
No idea. We got divorced many years ago. And I have no idea. She's married again. I was with my 3rd wife when he died, and I was stepmother, and I don't see her anymore either.
And your book, how would one get a copy of that?
I have them, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No other advertising?
Pardon?
No other advertising like...
Not right now. I think it's on Amazon. And when I get my other book out, then I'll be advertising the 2 of them again. But they're the only time you can find that book is if you buy my other book and you see it advertised in there, or I find the at a fair or something. I just did Lebanon Fair for 3 days. I'm doing a Basra Fair market, something or other, farm market next week, and so. But yeah, you can get it from me.
So when you mention your other book, you're talking about the Growing Up in Mystic book.
Mystic. I wrote a book about Mystic in the 1950s. And that is growing up in the 50s and what it's like. Great book. Great book to just pick your brain about what you did when you were a kid. You know, and you say, oh, I remember that too. And start writing this stuff down. And it gives you an insight of what your parents' life was like, or your grandparents, and you go, really? And my grandson says, really? He said, you really like that? I said, yes. I mean, you know, television. We didn't have television. We had a radio. We just listened to the second Mrs. Burton, or the Green Hornet, or FBI. FBI every night after the FBI, they tell you about the most wanted criminals. And I was a little kid. And I'd go in the bedroom, I'd come out and say, Dad, somebody's under the bed. Tom, there's nobody under the bed. Yeah, it is. He'd come in the bedroom and he'd look. See, there's nobody here. They're outside the window. Tom, we're on the 2nd floor. Okay. So little things like that are in the book. But they're fun. So, we got a couple of minutes left. If anybody's got anything like to add, any more questions?
Excuse me. What were some of your favorite things to do with Todd, like growing up and when he was a kid, teenager?
Good question. Unfortunately, I was one of these fathers that had a job and had to work, and we didn't do a lot together. But we never left him home. As a mother and father, we took him everywhere. And just being with him. You know, we just sit there and talk. And then he was alone with me for the last 7 years of his life. He lived with me, except when he was in the military. And I think I probably learned to know him better than any of the 15 years or whatever before that. He was a very interesting kid. And we went fishing a couple of times, but you know, for the most part I'm not an outdoor person. For the most part, it was just really taking care of him. So, we have 2 minutes left. I want to thank you all for being here. And I hope it was entertaining and educational for you. And I hope that everybody has been watching. And again, great lineup next week. You got Frankie Justin Lamprey and his band Rough Stock. Tish Raby, children's book author, Cat in the Hat, is going to be here in, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. Kevin and Melissa brought Mystic Organics. You learn about inhaling oxygen. They have an oxygen bar. And you get down there, I guess you get some oxygen. And interesting, though. I got to get some pictures. And then they're building a monument for 2 military guys that were crashing the plane. I think it was in the 40s, early 40s. And a couple of vets from Norwich are trying to raise money to put up the monument. He's going to be here. It's going to be a great story. Special thank you to SEC TV and Frank for hosting this special program that we got actual live audience, even though it's a taped show. And really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for watching. Email me at santostom@comcast.net. And you should be reading. Cuddle up with a good book. And see you next week. Thank you.
You're welcome.